I think
Is that
there are
right?
very healthy ways of escaping reality. Like you can do it in many healthy ways. Reading a book is great. I know it sounds dumb, but like put yourself in a fictional character's shoes is amazing. Watch a movie. Go on a trip. Like people get high on trips. I swear. I swear. Like if
No, I
you
experienced that
you've
actually. Yeah,
yeah,
the
of
last
course
week I introduced myself. Yeah.
people can reach like crazy states of euphoria without any substance whatsoever.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the 8th episode of Unfinished Business. Today I'm here with Thibault Schegin.
Yes.
There you go. I could say it. Thibault Schegin. Who are you?
So I'm a student here at Haberspace. I'm French and German of origin. I am 24 years old. I have a background in engineering. And I grew up in London, hence the accent.
Yes. Not a very French man.
No, I don't sound very French, do
No.
I? But I think culture-wise, I'm more French than anything else.
So I've known you for a couple of months now.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is that you, like myself, are very, very self-critical.
Extremely so, yeah.
Yeah. Why? And first of all, like, how does it feel like to criticize yourself on a day-to-day basis?
I think, okay, well, like everything, if you look at it objectively, there are good and bad sides to self-criticism. I think fundamentally it comes from the correct intention of wanting things to be right. So you want yourself to be right and to do things correctly, and you hold yourself to high standards as a consequence. But I think it also then kind of spreads to your view of the world, and so you hold other people as well to high standards because you think, well, if I do something well, I expect other people to do as well because I'm not going to tolerate people slacking off when I'm doing an extra effort, you know. So I think the fundamental thinking is self-betterment, self-development, growing, reaching for the ideal, reaching for who you want to be, always striving towards in that direction. And obviously, it comes with some major drawbacks, which are that an ideal is called an ideal for a reason, and it's that it's an ideal. It's imaginary. You won't get that. Like it's a dream, you know, because you're always pushing it even further. Otherwise, there's no challenge. So, you know, you're kind of reaching for something that's not there, so you're constantly disappointed in yourself, and that's why like you keep cutting yourself down. So that's the major drawback, is that you're constantly like unsatisfied with yourself.
And hurting yourself.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
In excessive amounts, it's very unhealthy.
There are a few dictators in history that I'm a fan of.
Okay.
And I remember I used to go to therapy, especially during quarantine, so online. And I remember, I still do sometimes in my mind, call this self-critical part the dictator in my head.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
And dictators are, quite often very wrong. So when you actually, when you manage to quieten down this dictator, then you start realizing, oh my God, I'm such a dick to the rest of the world as well, just because I'm such a dick to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're a dick to yourself, it hurts a lot, but you're only getting hurt yourself. That's what you think. But no, you're hurting everyone.
Yeah.
How do you
that's
manage it?
I think so. I think there's also the idea of dictatorship. There's a good element to the metaphor, but there's also you're kind of bringing bad connotation of dictatorship with it, which is obviously everything that people associate with dictatorships. But if a dictatorship comes with good intention, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's the same person who stayed a long time and can actually stay long enough to make change. So a dictatorship isn't all bad. So you have to also nuance the notion of dictatorship and self-criticism. See what I mean?
Yes.
And so that's my first point. And my second point is how do I manage how do I manage and kind of stifle the self-criticism towards myself and others, and keep it like socially acceptable? If I guess that was your question.
Well, socially acceptable, not necessarily in terms of just for the sake of being socially acceptable, but in the sake of, having a society that is functional. Let's say that is not, a bunch of dicks being dicks to each other. That's kind of.
I think if you're a quite well-known saying is like, if you're aware of something, then that's already half of the problem solved. Have you ever heard of this kind of thinking? It's like,
well, just showing up is half the battle. That's the closest thing I've heard. But yeah, it totally makes sense to me.
In French, we say a man who's aware is worth two. So the basic idea is if you're aware of your own weaknesses, then like you've already made a big jump. So if you're aware that you're self-critical and you're aware that you keep cutting yourself down, and that spreads to other people, and you cut other people down in your head as well, and you hold them up to high standards, and they can feel that pressure, and you know that you have an impact, and you know that you're not like some invisible, transparent person, like you're part of a society and you have an impact on people. If you're aware of that, then you can like that's when you can start to take action to kind of nuance it and make it a bit more, like, make it softer on people, like, don't be as harsh on people, and also don't be as harsh on yourself. That's something that takes a lot of time. I think you develop these kinds of habits quite early on in childhood, probably, as most psychological things, I guess. And it takes many years into young adulthood to fix these kinds of habits, I think.
Well, I guess
that's
right
why
now
you grow. Yeah, that's why we grow so much at our ages, is because you keep that's when you realize that all those habits that you developed as a child and as a teenager, they don't hold in the real world. Like you can't be like that. It's not sustainable.
Well, what I've been told by basically by others your age is that the period we have between me being 19 and you being 24 is the period while this happens. No?
It's not
so
enough.
Still time left.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think even older people will argue that at their age it's still not finished. Like some people will argue that you're never done.
Yeah, this podcast is called Unfinished Business for
exactly.
that very reason.
Like it's exactly that. Yeah, like I think Hannes said that in one of his episodes. We're constantly unfinished business. Like you never
that's the
get
exact
that.
phrase where the sentence, the name of the podcast came from as well. Yeah, I love that so much.
We're never done. We never get that, and this can be kind of discouraging. But I mean, that's the way it is, I guess. There's no reason to be discouraged about it. It's just how it is. You just keep growing. There's also, you can see it in this positive way. You can shine this positive light on it, that you're constantly evolving, and there's a beautiful side to that. But it's I think what varies is the speed at which you progress through life, and that speed, I think, is much greater at our age than when you're 40, for example, or 45.
This awareness that you mentioned, sometimes of course, I'm very self-aware about being self-critical. This is something that I've mostly worked on over the past, I don't even want to say a year, less than a year, but I've managed to become quite aware of, like, understand when I'm being self-critical and sort of stop the pain. But sometimes the self-criticism actually stems from the awareness. Because I've also become a lot more aware of the other aspects of my life, every action I take.
Yeah, and the fact that you started being aware, it made you more like sensitive to all the other stuff that might go wrong. Yeah,
exactly.
Makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, my self-criticism applies to every single thing I do. So I don't think there are many areas I could recite right now in my life where I'm, quite lenient and tolerant on myself, at least. Like I think the most, for me personally, the most the aspect in which I'm the least tolerant is socially. So I'm very, very aware of how I behave towards other people, and to me that counts. Like, it's very important. And so as soon as I'm very slightly off of, like, this idea that I have in my head of how I want to behave and the person I want to be towards other people, as soon as I'm very slightly off, I just kick myself in the shins, you know. And it's not a very healthy habit at all.
I mean,
But
not
at
only
least
does it,
like I grow from it, I guess.
but that growth thing, I don't know. I mean, it definitely hurts a lot. It
Oh, yeah.
makes social events very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, this is my main struggle with any social event.
But the thing is, like, when you succeed, when you're happy, you're proud of how you behaved, and you're like, I actually did fine. Like, that's within my zone of tolerance. Like, I tolerate how I behaved. You're like, that's good. I know where I'm going now. Like, I have an even better idea. Like, my goal is even clearer. This is the direction I'm going in. I'm happy with this way of behaving at this time of my life. See what I mean? It defines things. It makes them clearer. Because it's one thing to behave in a way that you don't like and say, "Ah, I don't like this." But it's like, well, how should you behave? Because it's like, it's way harder to work through things by eliminating them than by actually finding what you do like. See what I mean?
But it's really, really hard to find what you like.
Yeah, of course.
The main struggle. It's really, really difficult. I mean, I still struggle with it. Honestly, it takes me on the order of 2 months to actually regularly talking to a person to actually even be comfortable enough to remove that extreme self-criticism when I'm interacting with that person.
Yeah. That seems like a very reasonable time frame for me.
Okay. So in terms of self-criticism, we're very, very similar.
Yes.
Like, yes. I wonder how other people. I should ask more people about this because most people don't seem like they're very self-critical from the outside.
I don't think it's something that shows that much. I think, like, people have to be particularly self-critical for it to be blatantly obvious. I mean, you picked up on it for me, but I think I also mentioned it before. You must have said something like that about yourself, and I
think you started that conversation actually.
Oh, I did?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
A while ago.
Yeah. But I think someone you don't talk to that much, like, it's not something that you can just see.
So you also seem like a person who is very into planning.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's the plan for your life? You're a quarter a century in, almost a quarter century in. What's the plan?
I don't like the idea of thinking that I'm close to 25 years old. I think that's a universal feeling. But the plan is, well, big question. I think I'm definitely more at ease with fears that I had before, and so uh, before I was very afraid of this idea of like, what will I do later in my life? Like, what will I become? Um, will I have a stable job? Will I be doing something I like? Or like, I was very afraid of those subjects. Now I'm more comfortable with the ambiguity. Um, but that took some time. That definitely took some time, and it also helped a lot that I quit engineering, which I didn't like at all. So obviously, if you're doing something you don't like, and you know that you're going to change, but you don't know how, or what direction you're going to go in, like obviously that you can imagine that would spike up a lot of existential
Mm-hmm.
questions about yourself and where you're going. And the fact that I found something afterwards, it helped a lot. But now I'm I'm thinking um, that I want to be very clear about what matters to me, and I want to make it the only thing that matters that much to me is that I make sure that the values that I hold are kept during my life, during the next few years, let's say medium to long term. So I want to make sure that my lifestyle fits those values.
And how do you classify these values?
Um, I right now I'm still very much focused on or I hold a strong appreciation towards independence and freedom and that kind of stuff. I think it comes from being young still,
And French.
and French maybe. That's the word, independence. Um, but it's just that I'm I like the fact that ever since I left my family home at the age of 17, I've moved a lot. I have a very international background. I've been lots of places, and I like that about myself. And I'm not ready to give that up at all. Like that's a core part of who I am. And and if I have a job that pins me somewhere, I won't be happy. So I need to be able to move. I need to be able to um, see the people I hold dear, which they'll always be scattered around the globe, and I need to be able to see them. So um, I, I think I would quickly be burned out by a job that just pins me in one location, especially if it's a location that's far away from everyone that is close to me. So that's one important factor. Uh, Another important factor is that location is also very important. So I can't be like I won't enjoy uh, Brussels or the Netherlands. It's flat. It's not that interesting. The weather's not super nice. There are no mountains. It's just like, why? I wouldn't like. I have no business there. Like I wouldn't want to be there. So uh, I like Switzerland. I like the mountains, um, and I like moving around. So location counts. Hopefully, I can triangulate these factors to find something that actually fits me. Um, and I've I've thought about money a little bit. I don't think it's that much of an issue as long as it allows me to live decently, comfortably. That's about it. I don't think about it that much.
Would you like to be a what they call a digital nomad or a nomad in general?
Um, no, because I need to have like my bearings. So I need to have one place that's central to me. Um, so I would enjoy periods of nomadism.
Nomadism.
I don't know what the word is, but periods of that. Like um if I was allowed to go on a month trip and you gave me some time to organize my stuff, get a SIM card, blah blah, so I could have 4G everywhere and work from a van, I would be great, very happy. But for a limited amount of time, I wouldn't want it to be an indefinite period of nomadism.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to trying this actually.
Yeah, you told me about your trip.
So
how's that going?
I don't know. This driver's license one. It's too boring. It's like
did you start the theory test?
Irrelevant and mind numbing. I've done like half the theory tests.
Good.
Yeah, but it's.
I'm still reading the book.
Well, I was actually talking to my mom who did English exam in Spain.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Don't read the fucking book."
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like just do the tests and then whatever you got wrong, go back, because the book is just so badly written.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can testify.
But anyway, whenever I get my driver's license, I'm gonna probably spend at first 3 months driving around Europe. At maybe I would have a second round. If I end up going to Thailand, then also I would like to do that in Southeast Asia, maybe. I definitely want to do it in the US and Europe. These two are places that I really want to.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean the next few years of my life.
You can do it over a few.
I'm still single. Hopefully, I'll be still single by then. I don't want to be grounded by relationships.
You don't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, there's no girl that's gonna stop you. Like, you're my boyfriend now.
No.
Like,
taken. Yeah,
that doesn't happen.
Shit. I don't know if I want to be a nomad either. I definitely want to have my home.
Yeah.
But where that home would be, I have no clue. Because
I feel like we stand in similar positions in regards to that. Like, you need a home, but you also enjoy periods of nomadism, of running around, like doing whatever you want.
I mean, for me, home probably won't be an option for some years.
Yeah.
Because what I want to do is not very compatible with the lifestyle there. But otherwise, I mean, okay, let me hear this from you. You've lived, well, all around the world, but mainly all around Europe.
I've only lived in Europe. I've only lived in
North America? Never?
No.
Okay. Why did I think that? Anyway, so you've lived all around Europe. What makes Europe so appealing in this regard?
Oh, you should ask my parents. I didn't have much of a say in where we lived, to be honest. I was born in Germany because of my dad's job. That's why we lived there at the time. Moved to England because of my dad's job. Then moved to Switzerland for my studies. Then 9 months in Paris because that's where my family was. And now I live here in Barcelona, and I go to Portugal regularly because that's where my parents are now. But I mean, the only ones that I chose were Switzerland, Paris, and Barcelona. Switzerland was because I already knew the area from my grandparents' house, and I like the area a lot. It's in the mountains. There's a lake. It's beautiful. The quality of life is amazing. It's unbeatable in many regards. And I'll always appreciate that area a lot. Paris, I just knew that I wanted to live there. Even if it's less than a year, I wanted to live there at least once in my life because I felt like I had some catching up to do in Paris. Because on both of my parents' sides, we have family in Paris. Like, I have a lot of family there, and I just felt like I needed to spend time with them while I'm figuring out exactly what I want to do with my life. Because that's just right after I left engineering. And then once I found what I wanted to do, it was here in Barcelona, so I moved here. That's it. So there wasn't much more thought that went into it. And since I've spent I I I I mentioned that my bearings are very important to me, and all my bearings are in Western Europe. So I can't really imagine myself feeling at home anywhere else. That's about it.
I mean, for people outside of Europe, especially Western Europe, there's this, aura around Europe, and there's this dream of, oh wow, if I move out of this third world country or second world country and I go to Western Europe, I'm gonna have this great life. Which, if you look at the standards of living here, is mostly true,
Yeah.
at least for now. What would be your sales pitch for what Europe right now stands for? Forget about, or not stands for, or like what. I don't even I don't even know how to phrase this. How it attracts you personally, the idea of Western Europe or Europe.
Mm. I think, okay, even if you look at it like without the borders, without the countries, just Europe, naked Europe.
Forests and
It's
rivers.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Europe is a beautiful place. I'm not saying that everywhere else in the world is not beautiful. I'm just saying that Europe is a very beautiful place, and it varies tremendously in terms of latitude.
Mhm.
So you can go a short distance from north to south, and the landscape will change a lot. Which it gives Europe, which is the smallest continent, might be bigger than Australia and all that stuff, but I don't know. It's a very small continent, and it has this. It's like packed with this richness because it's so small and diverse. So I think that's like uh, the key feature that makes Europe attractive is that it's so diverse and so compact, close together.
It actually is insane how diverse
Yeah,
Europe is. It's like,
for the surface area.
holy shit, you literally go from, town to town, and it's different architecture, different type of people,
And it's the oldest continent as well, like in terms of like modern culture, documented culture. It's
arguably.
Arguably, but
We don't know how many documents were lost in sort of the Middle Eastern civilizations. And
I agree. I take back what I said. But it's a very old continent,
of course,
and it's really packed with history as well. So where in Asia or Africa or the Middle East, you'll have very old and interesting culture spread over like great
vast lands. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. In Europe, it's like all packed together. So it's very interesting, I think.
I'm willing to bet that's a cause of the many, many, many wars that was fought within Europe over the years. But so I really like history as a curiosity. I play a lot of historical games, a lot of paradox games. I just basically half the videos I watch on YouTube or documentaries that I watch are history based. What for you makes history interesting to learn and study?
One element of history that I like, it's more like an element of time perception than anything else. But it's the fact that right now, when we think of history, we think of it as one continuous line that makes sense as a whole, because it's like a succession of events. But when you think of it as the people who actually lived at that time, they were completely blind as to what was coming next, just in the same way as we are now. And so, if instead of looking at it as one continuous line of time, and instead of looking at it like that, you look at it as consecutive presence, then it kind of I feel like that idea is a bit mind blowing. Like the fact that when one person made a decision, it kind of impacted so much afterwards, and they had no idea how. And the fact that they were completely blind, but we have this bird's eye view of history.
Yeah, there's this Steve Jobs quote that you can't connect the lines going forwards, but you can definitely connect them going backwards, and
Yeah,
that's exactly.
yeah, true.
I'm really curious about how much we have missed and lost. You know, the historical events, the people, the macro and the micro of what we've lost.
Mhm.
But in general, there are things that I think history is the most humbling subject there is. Outside of maybe, you know, physics, even because you got to have a foundation of physics to understand how the universe works and, you know, how massive it is. That already in itself is humbling. But then you as an individual human, you know, with history you learn, okay, you as an individual human, however we happen to be this small thing in this massive, massive universe, there was like 108 billion of us. 8 billion are still alive, and each of us make decisions, and then at some point there are a few that get remembered throughout history because they had such a massive impact in either raising the productivity or reshifting how the politics work. It's really fucking humbling.
But yeah, and if you think about all those people that we don't remember because they weren't documented, they weren't recorded, and the stories weren't told about them, like it's absolutely certain that there were some incredible people in there.
Of course.
And I would have I often like to think about myself having conversations with people from certain time periods, and I think that's very interesting to kind of simulate how that would pan out. And yeah, that's it really. I think in general I'm a bit more interested in how people lived at a certain time more than what makes a certain time interesting, like what big thing happened at that time. Like I'm not that interested in like the huge events. Like I'm not as interested as the idea of World War II and the dates and the blah blah blah,
Which is
more
exactly what
than
we learn in school.
Yeah.
We just learn the dates and the main
exactly,
causes
which
of
I don't find very interesting. I want to know, how did they live? Like, how did they think? What was the general mindset at the time? What was valued? What wasn't valued? You know, like that's more interesting to me.
Have you heard Hardcore History by Dan Carlin?
Mm-mm.
So he has this series. So basically, just as an intro for those who don't know, is each episode is about 4 to 5 hours long, 3 to 5 hours, let's say, long, and he goes in as much depth as he can possibly go into. And I think he did a 6-part series on World War One. Each episode, again, 4 or 5 hours long. It's basically a book, and he goes into insane detail from using quotes from letters that random soldiers wrote to the generals, to the high-level leaders. You really, instead of memorizing, and I remember in year 10 in British school, it's like, oh yeah, what were the 5 main causes of World War One? Nationalism, blah 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 blah. You actually get to hear from first-hand experience how it sounded like when the biggest cannon at the time was fired towards you. That's what's fucking amazing about history.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I wouldn't have the patience to sit through 4 or 5 hours of that. But what I do appreciate about that is that you don't remember one single thing. Maybe you might remember a few specific things, but you remember like a general impression. You have an impression of how things were at that time,
which is absolute horror.
And but that's what I would want. Like if there was a way of condensing getting an impression of something from 4 or 5 hours to like 5 or 10 minutes, I would totally be in. I would just absorb that stuff. I would love it.
We talked about history and we talked about values, although I kind of want to go deeper into that in a bit.
Yeah.
One person who has kind of become very famous on the internet, well, not kind of, he's become very famous on the internet for his stances, well, for his very in-depth interest in history and also his stances on morals and values that our society is going in, is Jordan Peterson. a lot of haters, a lot of lovers. I found out that you happen to also enjoy a lot of his work.
Yeah.
What attracted you to Peterson's work, first of all?
I think okay. So he just popped up onto my YouTube like 2 years ago or something, and I watched one of his videos, and I found that he's very precise in the terms he uses and the information he uses, and he has very reliable information, and he makes a point of not being biased by defensive opinions. He's not biased by emotion. Like he has no personal agenda in any of like what he says. He's just it feels like he's objective and he's neutral about it. And I appreciate that, because I don't want anyone to be telling me stuff just because like they personally believe in it or something. Like I want something impartial.
You know, Peterson, going back to the Peterson topic, he came into my life at a very interesting point, because I think I was like, I don't know, 14, 15. And I think in most 14, 15-year-old boys' lives, they start forming their values.
Yes.
So he was, I mean, at the time I was consuming a shitload of content, and at the time he happened to be one of the thinkers that I was like, oh, cool, this guy has some interesting ideas.
Yeah.
Kind of brings me back to the values topic. In terms of values versus morals, where do you draw the line? Because you said you have strong values that you want to live by. But then there are also choices and opinions, let's just say.
Yep.
So, did I say values versus morals? I meant values versus opinions.
Okay.
There are a lot of political opinions in the world around us, especially in our age range. Where do you draw the line?
Between values and opinions?
Yeah. Let's say either political values and political opinions, or just general life values. And
well, I think in a sense they kind of mix when you think about it, but I think opinions are more subject to like they're more applied to concrete matters, as in real life matters, and values are more ideals that mean a lot to you. So it's I think that's the difference. So values are like ideals that you strive for and that you defend, and opinions are more like what you believe is the right thing to do in a certain situation. It's more like grounded. Okay, that's where I would draw the line between the two. Yeah.
Gotta go back to my cheat sheet. Do very opinionated people annoy you?
Yes. Because well, it depends. It depends how tactful they are. So if they're very loud and inconsiderate, I won't like them, and I won't appreciate them, and I won't want to talk to them, and I certainly won't want to hear what they have to say. However, if they know that they're opinionated and they make an effort to not come on too strong, then I will appreciate the effort, and I will want to hear what they have to say. But generally speaking, when someone mentions the word opinionated or strong of opinion, I kind of imagine a militant person, and that's never a nice thing, like being described as militant.
You know, on this specific subject for myself, I'm all over the place in terms of my opinions.
Yeah.
In terms of what in this very moment I believe, and in a week's time I might even end up believing the opposite. There are probably a handful of stuff that I actually have kept over the years, from childhood all the way to adulthood, 2 years into adulthood, a year and a half into adulthood. But I try to stick to the center as much as possible, especially recently, in the recent years that I've matured enough to be able to even understand that concept. But I see more and more people around me over time
Who
that
venture away from the center, or
not only venture away from the center, but become so possessed by that side that they pick when they venture away from the center that you just look at them, you talk to them for 2 minutes, and you can exactly map where they stand. You can exactly tell, oh, she's a socialist. Oh, this guy's a Nazi. How do we...
do you only are you only thinking of political stance when you think of opinion, or do you think of opinion in general?
Well, I mentioned politics because that's mainly
Your subject of interest, I'm guessing.
Yeah, like that's, when I subconsciously start analyzing people, that's one of the main things that I analyze.
Yeah.
But honestly, it could be anything in any in any aspect of life. The choices that thing is, especially here, not even here, everywhere, things have become quite political. People are so involved in politics that almost any issue becomes political. So
Yeah.
maybe that's one of the reasons I
Mhm.
mentioned politics. But in general, do you think, first of all, we should do this? But if so, how do we drive people back towards moderation?
I think people drive themselves back. I think it's part of growing as a person. Like, if you start seeing weaknesses in your own position, you'll want to find a better one. So you start to kind of search a little bit. I think some people are prone to feeling very, very tied to their opinion, whatever their opinion may be. It might even change very quickly. But I think some people can have a very strong opinion A, and then the next day, very strong opinion B. Even though it's not the same as yesterday, it's still very strong, and they still believe it very much. But I think after a while, they'll kind of see, okay, well, when I go too extreme, there's clearly a problem, and when I go too extreme over there, there's also a problem. So I'm kind of they'll find a balance at some point. But it's kind of like it's kind of like physics. If you put a little marble in a ball, like it'll kind of roll around for a bit, and then it'll find its stable point.
So basically, your hope is that at some point, one will become so devoured by this ideology that it will collapse under itself, basically.
I think no, they'll just like shave off some parts until they're happy with what they have.
So
I think it's a slow and gradual. Yeah, they dissolve the most, like the rough edges of their opinion, and they gradually shape it over time.
I'm just trying to link this in my mind to countries that then happen to become possessed by ideologies. Nazi Germany, Soviet Union, Iran. It does seem
I'm more talking about like a personal journey, like an individual opinion, like from that perspective. I'm not thinking of international politics when I say this.
Are you concerned that at some point countries that you have lived in will become overtaken by some ideology that is crazy enough to whack everything else out, whack democracy out?
I think in a certain sense, you might say that Western culture already has, but I mean, there seems to be a very widely adopted acceptance of listening to every single piece of criticism and taking it to heart. Like, everyone has their own voice, and you have to listen to whatever they have to say, even if it holds no like it doesn't hold the slightest bit of relevance, or if it's completely minor. Like, that's becoming a very, strong part of Western culture, and people seem to be defending that very strongly. And so, in a sense, like, we're already becoming obsessed with a certain ideology, which is fixing everyone's single little problem. And I mean, in a society that doesn't happen. We live, like, we're many people. You won't ever find a situation where every single person is happy and has zero problems. Like, that won't happen. You know. So being obsessed with the idea of hearing everyone out so that everyone is completely happy and is never offended. Like, I think it's kind of a lost battle already.
So it's not even a good.
I think it's important to listen to people, and you shouldn't ignore people. But I think we're attributing a little too much to, like, it's becoming a bit too important. You know, saying, "Oh, I'm not happy with this, and I'm offended by that," and everything. Like,
Okay.
people get offended a bit too quickly. That's what I mean in today's Western culture.
But that whole, cancel culture and getting offended, that comes from a collective goal, let's say, that you said, that is, try to fix everyone's old problem. But
Yeah.
should there even be a collective goal, whether it's to reduce suffering or to
Well,
make
reduce
humanity
suffering
more
is important, but
prosperous?
would you say that, like, I mean, if I don't know, if you felt like you wanted to wear a dress and people looked at you funny because, well, obviously you don't usually wear dresses, and you would find that offensive that people look at you, would you like, is that suffering? No, it's just people having a normal and like predictable reaction. We, like, this is getting super political, and I feel like I feel like my views are being projected out into the internet. But
I did this to another guest, the previous guest as well. She wasn't very happy.
yeah, I hope people won't take this, like, too personally. But my point is, like, if you shouldn't pay so much attention to the tiniest little thing that people find offensive, that is just, like, it's predictable. Like, it doesn't come with a bad intention. If you wear a dress and I keep looking at you, it's like, well, usually men don't wear dresses. This isn't part of a typical man's dress code. So obviously I'll be kind of intrigued. I'll be like, why is Roham wearing a dress today? You know? And over time, that kind of, like, that gets that slips under the radar. Like,
So if I just start basically dressing as the opposite sex every day, and came here eventually,
over time, people
Yeah.
won't pay attention to it. We
Exactly.
adapt quite quickly as humans, and I think if you go back like 15, 20 years, men wearing pink was maybe kind of weird
For
for
sure.
a long time. And now if you see a man wearing pink, it's like, sure, no problem. Like, there's no problem with a man
my
wearing
dad.
pink.
My dad wears
I
pinks.
I know they're very, very dumb examples,
No, it's not, because this is how our society is, basically.
but my fundamental point is we shouldn't focus and spend so much energy and so much media power on tiny little issues.
But the feeling I got while you were speaking is that maybe in a twisted way, that is the goal of all this political correctness and all this cancel culture, is to accelerate society getting used to the things that you mentioned.
Which is a very valid intention.
Are they doing it well, in your opinion?
I still have this feeling like it's a bit excessive, like it's a bit too strong.
Mhm.
Like, I don't feel like it adds that much value to a society as a whole. I think it's important that everyone is happy, and so if something is severely affecting your life, then it should be addressed. But um, I like at the same time, I feel like it's getting a lot of media attention, a bit more than it should,
Mhm.
and that there are more important matters that concern everybody and not only minorities, that are even more pressing, and that should be addressed sooner. For example, climate change, not talked about that much when you think about it.
Probably a lot less than the royal family of the UK, honestly.
Exactly, and like, I mean, I spent 16 years in the UK. I don't really care that much about what happens in the royal family.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's it doesn't impact me. I don't care that much. They're not a symbol to me. It doesn't mean anything. I don't follow what they're doing. Sometimes one gets married, has a kid, whatever. Okay, good. It's
They're
like
just random people who happen to
like
be at the
every
top.
family.
You know, and stuff.
So I think we're not focusing on the important things enough. And so, for example, my sister's very she's very interested in everything that has to do with nutrition
Mhm.
at the moment, and so she does a lot of research, and she follows she took a course and everything, and when you think about it, we eat way too much meat
Mhm.
in our diet, and meat is something that's been in our diet for a very long time. But even biologically, as humans, we're not meant to eat meat, and that's still
Is that like officially proven, or as in
well.
as
Okay,
close as it
look
can get to
at
this?
a real omnivore, which is an animal that eats everything, which we are supposedly meant to be. They have, I believe, way shorter intestines than we do.
Mhm.
I think, yes, they have shorter ones. And real herbivores have slightly longer ones, but so we're kind of in the middle, but we're not meant to eat as much meat as other animals, definitely. And we're eating way more meat than we should. And it's like, if you look at our teeth, like there's lots of evidence. And I won't go into all the details because I don't have the proficiency, but I just think it's an interesting subject that the way we eat is very important, and because it's what fuels your body, and
Mhm.
it's how you function, and you should be like very clear about that. And another important factor which actually links that to climate change is that I think 80% of the surface area that we use to grow corn and peas and all that stuff actually goes to animals
Yeah.
that produce the meat.
Things around
Which
75%, very close. Yeah.
and it's like these huge quantities go to produce very, very little food.
Mhm.
Like it's ridiculous in the end when you think about it. And
Yeah,
so
just direct feed is about 8-to-1 conversion, which is 8 kilos of feed
very bad.
for one.
It's very bad.
Yeah, and then when you count the
And it pollutes so much.
exactly.
It pollutes so much, and like if you went down this hypothetical route of greatly reducing the livestock and greatly reducing how much you need to feed them, and instead growing things that feed humans instead of the animals, you would solve a lot of problems at the same time, including global warming. You would help global warming. So I saw this documentary recently that was very interesting as well, where they said that all these all these measures that are being taken for carbon emission reduction, that like now they've kind of become political,
Of course.
more than anything else. But so it's kind of people saying, "Oh, look, I'm emitting less carbon." Like the company's going like that, so that like they're being recognized as good companies. It sounds so. It sounds like a conspiracy when I say it. I don't like that. But it's the real way of tackling it, which is actually quite logical when you think about it, is like, yes, you need to reduce the emissions in the, like, at least reduce the things that produce the most. But I think like more energy should actually be focused on regenerating instead of reducing the emissions. Like you can build back instead of reducing the emissions.
Interesting.
Like, you know, like take it the other way around.
Yeah.
It's quite a simple way of thinking about it, but just plant stuff. Like desertification is the worst thing that happens to the planet, because the planet thrives on having greenery, and humans rip that out all the time. So just put some green stuff everywhere. things will get better. You know?
Have you read Bill Gates' new book
Mm-mm.
on this?
No.
I'm almost done with it. Before he published the book, I listened to a lot of his talks and a lot of his blogs and stuff on the topic. I think it's actually onto something. You know,
Yeah.
people have a lot of opinions about Bill Gates, obviously,
Yeah.
but
Microchips in the arm.
Jesus Christ! Like who comes up with that, and then how does it?
They're very
spread so quick?
creative.
It is kind of creative, but it's
Yeah.
like, come on, give me a break. Microchip, and like you have a phone that's always in your pocket. And, you probably have a smartwatch and whatever. Like there's so many ways to track you. There's no need for a chip, but whatever. I think that guy's actually onto something, honestly, because I mean he's definitely a technophile. So
Yeah.
he believes that basically every single problem that we mentioned about climate change can be solved through investment in technology and research and development, which to a certain point I agree with. But other than that, are you hopeful in general?
So I think if you look at things in terms of generations, I think our generation is kind of, it has this pivot position where we have a lot of responsibility, and I think we recognize it. And so we know how much we need to do, and we know that it's urgent. And so in that sense, yes, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to fix things in time. But I also realize how much work it means, you know. And we are taking steps in the right direction, but there's so many things in the way that's slowing everything down, and it's actually mainly just people being very focused on money.
Like the straw thing, for example.
Yeah. But I feel like it's that age-old battle of some people wanting to make things right and wanting to actually survive, you know, and other people saying, no, I want my last little 2 cents before we all die. Like it's kind of ridiculous when you think about it. It's like, well, you're not going to make much money once the planet's completely done. You know, it's like just it's not a very difficult choice to make, I think. because we've proven, we all know how in how bad of a state the planet actually is today, and we're not doing that much to fix it.
No.
Because I think that the ones who actually can do something to fix it
don't give a shit.
Yeah, because they're like things are going well for them. Why would they change? Like in French, we have a saying is you don't change a winning team. And yeah, I'm pretty sure you can actually say this the same in English. But it's like, well, if things are going well for me how they are, why would I change? There's no need for change. I'm doing great because their measures of performance, like what it means to them to do great, is like, well, they're making tons of money.
Well, also the time frame for them is, assuming they're boomers, it's like another decade or 2, 3 decades maybe.
Yeah.
By the time the worst of it hits, they're already dead.
Still, like I'm not thinking of my lifespan. Like I want things to continue going great and better after I'm gone.
Of course, I hope for it to continue for another, for as long as the sun can sustain Earth. But we are actually the first who will inevitably experience it if we don't do something.
I agree.
I've been talking to some conservative people who, more conservative temperament, let's say, and the main concern they have, I mean, there's still some of them who don't believe in climate change, which, okay, I hope to change, but it's like, okay, the ones who do believe in climate change, the main concern they have is we are rushing it. These 10-year goals, these 30-year goals, they're too rushed. Obviously, the time frame we have available to us.
Well, at the current pace, yes, they're definitely too rushed.
Oh, really? You agree with that?
Well, I think in the sense that they're too hopeful. At the current pace, they're too hopeful. Like, it's a nice goal. Great.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's very nice to hear it, but do I actually believe that they'll get that? No.
I don't think the regulators believe that they'll get there either. But if I were to defend these, let's say, cut, the goal to cut emissions by 50% by 2030, which is literally less than 9 years away, and we haven't done shit. I think, especially now in the current, financial situation, given how much, liquidity and money there is, I think it's a good, what's the word for this? A good incentivizer to basically fund green projects, fund green research and development.
Yeah.
But otherwise, implementing those technologies that we have today over the next 10 years would probably be a waste of money and time.
Yeah, I think like the miracle solution would be to somehow make it economically viable and interesting to do the right thing. So instead of the money being in the opposite, like doing the opposite thing, like keeping things the way they are and in the direction that we're currently going, having the money and the bigger market be in redeveloping, regrowing everything.
Be for sure all
fixing everything. Like if that was possible, we would fix everything in a heartbeat, super quick. But because I think it's easier, like I'm not that hopeful that we'll manage to change people's attraction to money very quick.
I mean, other than the attraction to money, another problem is that, obviously there are these $1 trillion infrastructure that are revolve around oil and revolve around all the things that are leading to these greenhouse gases, that it's kind of like a house of cards. If you start pulling, eventually it'll collapse. You can cut the fossil fuel subsidies, which reaches around $5.3 trillion. You can tax carbon to cut those subsidies to an extent. You can cut fishing subsidies, but then how are you going to keep your houses warm until we do the research and development
Mm-mm.
and put all the nuclear plants and the solar panels or whatever?
Yeah.
What are we going to do in between? That's what scares me.
Yeah, true, very true. Well, I unfortunately don't have the answer, but I wish I did. But I'm like, in my very humble, non-expert opinion, I think in any case, plants will probably help greatly.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they don't, like, I would much rather live the rest of my life in a world with more plants
Than
than
more
in a
factory
dry
farms. Yeah.
dry world made of cities and rocks.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I know it's like the Earth is much more beautiful when it's green.
Of course.
I mean, the Earth is meant to be green and blue. If you look at satellite images over the last like 60 years, the images are kind of horrible because all the greenery goes away and everything becomes gray. It's kind of sad.
You're just literally seeing ecosystems die.
Yeah, like I want the planet to be green and blue. Don't want it to be gray and blue.
Or actually, theoretically, gray and green. Once you remove enough, once you add enough CO2, basically, the oceans could turn green, which would be disgusting.
Sounds disgusting.
How much do you ponder your own mortality?
Not that much.
Really?
I'm not afraid. I think it's great that we go someday. Like, this conversation switched very quickly, but I think it's a great thing that we go and that other people like continue after us.
So you wouldn't want to live forever?
Absolutely not. I wouldn't want to live forever, but if there was one impossible thing that I could do, among many other things actually, but regarding that subject, is that I'd find it very interesting to live pieces of time spread throughout like a large time period. So like a few years in that period, a few years in that period, like kind of get a taste for many different time periods. That I would find interesting.
That's what I'm. Yeah, that's the goal for me, for my life, and to
But
create
it's
that actually.
to create it.
Yeah, to allow you to live in different time
But like
periods.
living forever, that like I think it's way more of a nuisance than anything else. I think it would be very annoying. If you had the option of killing yourself at one point, then that would be a bit more interesting.
So you can
Because
choose to
I would
live,
like
let's say, 2 million years, and then at any point in these 2 million years, you can choose to.
Yeah, you can kill yourself after 3 years, maybe. You can just like having the option of cutting things off at one point. I think that would make the immortality thing much more interesting and much more beautiful because it actually gives it meaning. The fact that it has an end is what gives life meaning. Otherwise, what would be the point? So when like I think the thing that stresses people out when they don't feel like they have a purpose, they don't feel like they have a meaning, is because they have limited time. They know that like after a certain time they'll be gone, and if they don't feel like they've done anything, like what does it all mean, you know? So, but that's what gives it everything. Like everything comes from the fact that life has a start and an end. If it had no start and no end, it wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't be interesting, wouldn't be beautiful, wouldn't be like wouldn't be worth anything.
Would you so you definitely want to die?
Yes, at some point.
Yeah, and you wouldn't extend your lifespan?
Well, it depends where the extension goes.
150, 200.
at the end. That's what I mean. If I live the last 50 years as 100-year-old, then
No. You would be like a
please.
60-year-old, let's say, in
A
terms of your body
60-year-old,
health.
like live 100 years, like 50 years as a 60-year-old, and then the rest of my life, like stop aging for 50 years.
No,
at
you would
60.
just always you need like
Everything would
the
slow down.
worst state of your life in terms of aging will be what
The-
a 60-year-old is considered today.
Then that, like, maybe living 150 years wouldn't be that bad. Yeah, like I wouldn't mind.
But not much more.
No, not necessarily.
Mhm.
I think it what the opinion that I do hold though is that I find it a shame that humans aren't very, like, they lose a lot of capabilities at the end of their life. And so, like, I know I'm only 24, but when you're 24, you still have, like, you know that there's time ahead of you, and you want to do things, and you want to experience things, and you want to meet beautiful people and everything. But uh, I find it a shame that when you get older, you, like, if you haven't done some things before, well, like, the moment's passed, you can't do it anymore. I find that a shame. So, like, if you told me, so if you said that the oldest you ever got was like the physical state of a 60-year-old and the mental state of a 60-year-old, that's way more interesting to me, because I find that the scary part is after that. Like, that's the part that I'm more afraid of, because I'm afraid of not being able to do what I want to do. So, to keep my freedom and my capabilities and everything, I would rather die as someone who's capable of more, and then extend that duration. Like, so, as you said, aging slowly over 150 years, but dying as, in the end, someone who looks like a 60-year-old. Fine. That sounds okay to me. You can, instead of 60, you could even say like 25 or 30 or 35. And aging, like, imagine someone starting at 0, but aging very, very slowly over 150 years. And then
when you're 20, you look like a 10-year-old.
And then when you're supposed to die, you're like a 35-year-old.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
That would be cool, because you get tons of productive, energetic years.
Yeah, that's actually a life. I mean, at either way, life is definitely worth living, but that's a life that it is gonna inevitably bring more value, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, like, you can still do things until the end. Yeah.
So today's 420.
Is it?
Yes, today's 420, and it's
Oh,
a very
okay.
interesting day because it's my dad's birthday and my cousin's birthday, but it's also Hitler's birthday, so that's a very weird coincidence and history. But it's also, a very important day in the culture of cannabis consumers, let's just say.
Okay.
And now pop culture in general.
Mm-hmm.
What's your relationship to drugs?
Well, I'm actually, it ties back to what I said just before you asked the question, is that I try to have a very balanced and measured stance regarding drugs, just like so many other things. So I'm not against them. If people want to do them, fine. I think obviously some drugs are very dangerous, and it's the fact that they're illegal or not. I mean, it's subject to opinion. I don't think I have one. But I think some softer ones, they like people should be able to do them if they want. I just think that my general approach is like just don't overdo it. Like go easy on it. That's it. It's my general opinion is go easy on it. Same way, like, so I'd never touch anything that's very strong or hard type of drugs. Never, I would never touch that. But softer ones, I'd be open to trying or doing like very like spaced out, spaced out in time. Like I wouldn't. I'm absolutely not the type of person to like go all out or anything. Not my thing. Same thing with alcohol. Actually, alcohol, I'm quite notoriously
A non-drinker.
a non-drinker. Yes, people seem to focus on that a lot.
Because it's so rare.
But I don't understand why it's so rare. It's like I don't find that much pleasure in drinking. It doesn't have the most amazing taste. Like compare beer to an orange juice. Like how much tastier is orange juice? Like,
Yeah,
so
but
much
I don't want
better.
to drink.
Okay, orange juice doesn't make you more chatty. Sure.
No, but beer is like even non-alcoholic beer. It's still a very great drink, I think. No, but
I don't know. In terms of taste, personally, my opinion is that I mean there's no real benefit to beer. Like it's bread juice,
bread juice. Yeah, but alcohol
but
is so entangled with our society.
yeah, of course. I saw this graph some time ago. It's like it maps out the dependency of certain drugs and the harmful aspects of that drug. So how much harm it can do to a human body
over time, you mean, or
yeah,
just
or I don't know if it I don't remember if it was a single use or
Okay.
like over time, but alcohol and tobacco are way higher on the harm scale than we would ever dare to think, and they're also very high on the dependency scale.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of frightening to see how widespread they are, even though they're like they're pretty bad substances. Like you shouldn't be meddling with those things as much as is commonly accepted.
But why is it so attractive to alter your? Are we all just trying to escape reality?
I think there are very healthy ways of escaping reality. Like you can do it in many healthy ways. Reading a book is great. Like, I know it sounds dumb, but like put yourself in a fictional character's shoes is amazing. Watch a movie. Go on a trip. Like people get high on trips. I swear. I swear. Like
no, I experienced that actually. Yeah, the last week I experienced
people can reach like crazy states of euphoria without any substance whatsoever. Like one time I remember it very clearly because it was such a strong feeling. It was in 2013. I was on an expedition in Wyoming in the USA, backpacking through the mountains, and at one point I was with a group of people I didn't know before going on the expedition, and everyone was kind of having this huge argument. The vibe was generally very unhappy. There was no reason for me to feel any kind of euphoria, but people arrived to a consensus on where to place the tents, and I felt such relief that the day ended and that we placed the tents and the landscape was beautiful and everything. I just got euphoric for seemingly no reason, but I was super happy. I was extremely happy at that point. And it's not like I sniffed a plant. Like, you can feel euphoria like by yourself. You don't need things. You don't need drugs. You don't need alcohol. It's like if you want to get chatty, work on yourself. work on your socialization skills. You know, why do you need alcohol to like get you through that one time
Does it
and
even
do that
help you?
every time? Like if it's a regular occurrence that you'll be socializing, hint hint, it is. Like work on yourself and use that as a long-term strategy instead of like always thinking of one time and then one time and then one time.
Doesn't even
Makes no
work
sense to
as a
me.
good thing to help you socialize more. Maybe at the moment, but in general as a skill, you definitely
No, plus
actually go back.
I
and
find that alcohol is kind of it's kind of like flipping a coin. Like
Yeah,
one
definitely.
time, 50% of the time you're gonna have a bad time.
That's for
That's
sure.
my personal experience. That's also why I don't drink that much. But I mean, uh, why would I subject myself to that? It's just such a bad deal. I have no interest in doing that.
Okay,
So yeah, that's my
to
stance.
to close it up,
Hmm.
I think we're almost on 2 hours now.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Do you have any book recommendations?
Ooh. Well, I read mainly in French, but they might be translated, those books. There's a book I absolutely love. It's called Quelqu'un d'autre by Tonino Benakista, which means someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And the author is still Tonino Benakista. So it's a great book. It talks about, I don't want to spoil it too much, obviously, but it's a fictional story about two men who meet. That's literally the first 10 pages, so I'm not spoiling. It's two men who meet in a tennis club, and they both have a talk afterwards about their match, and they get into this deep conversation about how they're not happy about who they are,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to change. And they give themselves exactly 3 years to become who they want to be,
You told me about this. Yeah.
and meet back at the same bar. And I think the story is absolutely amazing. It's extremely well written, very inspiring, makes you think. I just absolutely love that book.
It's a short one, right? You said it's
It's a decent sized book. It's like maybe 350, 400 pages.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that long.
Okay.
Very good read.
Awesome. Well, Thibault,
Yeah.
thank you very much for being on this podcast. This
Thank you
was
for
one of
having
the
me.
best episodes, I would say.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
See you, folks.